You get the text. The promotion came through. The person you've been hoping would notice you finally did. And instead of joy, you feel suspicious. Like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, like happiness is a trick someone's playing on you. You scroll through your phone looking for bad news to balance it out. You check your bank account. You wonder what you forgot to do, because somewhere along the way, you learned that good things don't last. That contentment is dangerous. That if you let yourself be happy, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So you sabotage the moment before life gets the chance to. You reject the gift before it can be taken away. But what if I told you this isn't wisdom? What if this defensive crouch you call realism is actually the deepest form of training you've ever received? Training in misery, training in fear, training in never quite believing that good things are real. You weren't born this way. Watch a child receive a gift. They don't immediately scan for the catch. They don't wonder when it will be taken away. They don't feel guilty for wanting more. They simply receive. They are present with joy in a way that makes adults uncomfortable. Because we've been trained out of it. We've been taught that the default human state is struggling, wanting, lacking, preparing for the worst. That happiness is an exception that requires justification. That contentment is naive. That peace is what happens to other people, in other lives, under different circumstances. So, we become experts at suffering and amateurs at joy. We know exactly how to worry, how to catastrophize, how to find the flaw in every good thing. But ask us how to be happy when happiness arrives, and we're completely lost. We have no training for it, no practice, no technique. We've spent our lives preparing for war, and when peace comes, we don't know what to do with our hands. 2,000 years ago, a man who owned nothing understood something about happiness that most people never learn. His name was Epictetus. He was born into slavery, beaten by his master, crippled in body. Everything that could be taken from him was taken. And yet, he became one of the happiest men who ever lived. Not because his circumstances were good. They weren't. Not because he had some special gift. He didn't. But because he understood something that changes everything. The untrained mind defaults to misery. But the trained mind defaults to freedom, to peace, to a kind of contentment that doesn't depend on getting what you want. Epictetus knew that happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create through practice, through training, through understanding what is actually up to you and what isn't. And right now, your happiness is completely dependent on things that aren't up to you at all. Epictetus once told his students exactly what philosophy promises: not wealth, not fame, not even good circumstances. He said, philosophy promises to secure for man the things that truly belong to him, the things that truly belong to you, not your job, which can be taken, not your relationships, which can end, not your body, which can fail, but your capacity to respond, your ability to choose your attitude, your power to find meaning in any situation. This is what you were never taught. You were taught to find happiness in getting what you want, in having things go your way, in other people behaving the way you need them to behave. But these things are not up to you. They never were. And building your contentment on them is like building a house on quicksand. The slave understood what the emperor never could. True happiness comes from wanting what you have, not getting what you want. From working with reality instead of against it. From training your mind the way you would train your body. Your phone buzzes. Good news. And immediately, without even thinking, you start building a case against it. This is too good to be true. Something must be wrong. When is this going to fall apart? This is the untrained response. The mind that's been conditioned to expect disaster, to find the flaw, to protect itself from disappointment by rejecting joy before it can be taken away. You've become so skilled at this that you do it automatically. You don't even realize you're doing it. Good things happen, and you immediately start the process of explaining them away, minimizing them, waiting for the inevitable correction. Because you were taught that this is smart, this is realistic, this is what mature people do. But Epictetus would tell you something different. He'd say, you're not being realistic, you're being trained in unhappiness, trained in fear, trained in never quite believing that you deserve the good things that come to you. Think about how much practice you've had at being unhappy. How many hours you've spent worrying about things that might happen. How many conversations you've had about what's wrong, what's missing, what's not working. How many times you've rehearsed disaster in your mind, played out worst-case scenarios, prepared for disappointment. You are incredibly well-trained in misery. You could give a masterclass in it. You know exactly how to spiral, how to catastrophize, how to find the dark lining in any silver cloud. But happiness, joy, contentment, you've had no training at all. When good things happen, you're like someone who's never exercised being asked to run a marathon. You have no technique, no endurance, no idea what to do with the unfamiliar sensation of things going well. So you default to what you know, you find something to worry about, you diminish the good thing, you start preparing for it to end. Epictetus had a student named Naso who came to him with a familiar complaint. Naso was miserable, but he couldn't figure out why. His life was, his circumstances were decent. Nothing terrible was happening. So why did he feel so empty, so unsatisfied, so constantly on edge? Epictetus looked at him and said something that cuts to the heart of your condition. You have been trained from childhood to be dissatisfied. Trained, not born that way, not cursed with it. Trained. The way you might train a dog to sit or stay, you've been trained to find fault, to focus on what's missing, to always be preparing for the next problem. This training is so complete, so thorough, that you think it's just who you are. You think pessimism is realism. You think suspicion of good fortune is wisdom. But it's not, it's just training. And what's been trained can be untrained. You have a technique for unhappiness that's more sophisticated than anything you learned in school. Step 1, something good happens. Step 2, immediately scan for what's wrong with it, what's missing, what could go wrong. Step 3, focus on that instead. Step 4, when people point out the good thing, minimize it. It's not that big a deal. Anyone could have done it. I got lucky. Step 5, start preparing for when it ends, when the other shoe drops, when reality kicks in. This is your technique. You've practiced it thousands of times. You could do it in your sleep, and you probably do. But here's what Epictetus understood. You can have a technique for happiness too. You can train your mind the way you train your body. You can practice contentment the way you've been practicing discontent. You can learn to receive good things the way a child receives a gift, fully, presently, without immediately building a case against it. Epictetus spent his life teaching one fundamental distinction: what is up to you and what is not up to you. Your reputation, not up to you. Your health, not completely up to you. Whether other people like you, not up to you. Whether you get promoted, whether your investments do well, whether it rains on your wedding day, not up to you. But your response to these things, that's up to you. Your interpretation of events, up to you. Your attitude toward what happens, up to you. The problem is that you've been trying to find happiness in the things that aren't up to you. In getting the right job, finding the right person, having the right circumstances, and when those things align, instead of enjoying them, you immediately start worrying about losing them. Because deep down, you know they're not really under your control. But what if you found your happiness in the one thing that is, in your capacity to respond with grace, with acceptance, with presence? Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world. He could have anything he wanted, do anything he pleased, command armies, build monuments, reshape the world according to his will. And his private journal, which we now call his Meditations, is basically one long record of his struggle to be content, to find peace, to not be overwhelmed by anxiety, by the weight of responsibility, by the constant pressure of having so much that could be lost. The emperor with everything was training himself in the same techniques that Epictetus, with nothing, had mastered. Because both men understood something that you're just beginning to see. Happiness has nothing to do with your circumstances. It has everything to do with your relationship to your circumstances. The slave found freedom in accepting what he couldn't control. The emperor found peace in doing the same. And you, right now, in whatever situation you're in, can find the same thing. Epictetus believed that philosophy wasn't theory. It was training. He said, every art and every inquiry, and similarly every action and pursuit, is thought to aim at some good. The good that philosophy aims at is not knowledge, it's practice. It's the daily training of your mind to respond differently to life. This training begins with a simple recognition. You have been practicing unhappiness your entire life. You've gotten very good at it. You can seem miserable in any circumstance, find fault with any blessing, worry about any outcome. But you can also practice happiness. You can train yourself to receive good things without immediately building a defense against them. You can learn to be present with joy instead of planning its funeral. You can develop the skill of contentment the way you develop the skill of worry. It starts with paying attention to what you're doing right now. When something good happens, notice your immediate response, and then choose a different one. Epictetus taught his students 3 disciplines. The first was the discipline of desire. He said, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. This isn't about becoming a monk or giving up everything you enjoy. It's about understanding where contentment actually comes from. Right now, your happiness is held hostage by your desires. You'll be happy when you get promoted, when you find the right person, when you lose the weight, when you have more money. But notice what happens when you get these things. The happiness lasts about as long as it takes for you to start worrying about losing them, or to notice what you still don't have. The discipline of desire is learning to want what you have instead of having what you want. It's finding richness in what's already here instead of in what might be coming. It's the difference between being a collector of experiences and being present for the one you're actually having. Something happens to you. Let's say you don't get the job you wanted. Immediately, your trained mind starts telling you a story about what this means. I'm not good enough. Nothing ever works out for me. This is just how my life goes. But Epictetus understood something crucial. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The event itself is neutral. The job didn't happen. That's just a fact. But the story you tell yourself about what that fact means, that's where your suffering lives. Or your freedom. You could tell a different story. This wasn't the right fit. Something better is coming. I'm being redirected toward where I actually belong. These aren't just positive thinking tricks. They're recognition that the meaning you assign to events is the only thing that's actually up to you, and meaning is where happiness lives or dies. Acceptance is a muscle you've never exercised. Your whole life, you've been training the opposite muscle. Resistance, fighting against what is, wishing things were different. When something you don't like happens, you immediately start the work of changing it, avoiding it, or at least complaining about it. When something you do like happens, you immediately start the work of making it permanent, controlling it, or preparing for when it ends. Both responses come from the same place: the belief that your happiness depends on life being other than it is. But Epictetus, who had every reason to resist his circumstances, learned something different. He said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish. Wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." This isn't passive resignation. This is active engagement with reality as it is, not as you wish it were. This is the foundation of all contentment. This is where happiness begins. Good news arrives, and your mind immediately travels to the future. How long will this last? What if it doesn't work out? What's the catch? Bad news arrives, and your mind travels to the past. Why does this always happen to me? What did I do wrong? How could I have prevented this? But the only place where happiness actually exists is right here, right now. Not in the fantasy of how good things might get or in the story of how bad things have been, but in this moment, with whatever this moment contains. Epictetus knew this. He said, "No one can hurt you without your permission." But he could have said just as easily, "No one can make you happy without your presence." All the good things that have ever happened to you, you experienced them here. All the contentment you've ever felt, you felt it now. The training is learning to stay here, to be present with what is, instead of absent with what was or might be. The more you try to control what isn't up to you, the more out of control you feel. The more you try to guarantee your happiness by arranging your circumstances, the more anxious you become about those circumstances changing. This is the paradox that Epictetus understood better than anyone. True control comes from giving up the illusion of control. Real power comes from focusing only on what's actually in your power. Real freedom comes from wanting what happens instead of demanding that what happens be what you want. The slave became free by accepting that he was a slave, but then choosing how to be a slave. With dignity, with purpose, with an unshakable sense of his own worth that had nothing to do with his circumstances. You can become free the same way, by accepting your circumstances completely, and then choosing how to be within them. With presence, with grace, with the recognition that who you are is not dependent on what happens to you. Every morning, Epictetus would prepare his students for the day ahead. He'd remind them that they would encounter difficult people, frustrating situations, unexpected challenges, but also that they had everything they needed to handle whatever came. "Today I will be prepared," they would say, "for whatever fortune brings." This isn't pessimism. This is training. Training your mind to meet life as it is, instead of as you wish it were. Training your heart to stay open, even when things don't go your way. Training your spirit to find meaning in whatever circumstances you're given. But here's what they also train for: good fortune, joy, success, moments of unexpected happiness. They train to receive these gifts fully without immediately building a case against them. To be present with contentment instead of suspicious of it. To trust that good things can be real without having to be permanent. This is what you were never taught. This is the training you never received. But it's not too late to begin. Right now, you have a choice you didn't know you had. You can keep practicing misery. You can keep defaulting to worry, to suspicion, to the trained response of finding fault with good fortune. You can keep waiting for permission to be happy. Keep believing that contentment is something that happens to other people. Keep living like joy is dangerous and peace is naive. Or you can begin the training. You can start practicing presence the way you've been practicing absence. You can learn to receive good things the way you learned to expect bad things. You can develop the discipline of wanting what you have instead of having what you want. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about understanding that your response to life is the only thing that was ever really up to you. And choosing to train that response the way you'd train anything else you wanted to get better at. Through practice, through patience, through the recognition that you are not a victim of your circumstances, but the author of your response to them. Epictetus was beaten, crippled, owned by another human being. And yet he was freer than any emperor who ever lived, because he understood that freedom isn't about your circumstances. It's about your relationship to your circumstances. The trained mind doesn't need perfect conditions to be content. It doesn't need guarantees to be at peace. It doesn't need control over outcomes to feel secure. The trained mind finds freedom in acceptance, power in presence, wealth in gratitude for what already is. This is what's possible for you, not someday when your life is different, right now with whatever your life contains. The happiness you've been chasing, it was always here. The contentment you've been trying to earn, you already have access to it. The peace you've been waiting for permission to feel, it's yours to claim. Not because you deserve it more than anyone else, but because it was never about deserving. It was always about training, and the training can begin right now. 2,000 years ago, a slave discovered something that changes everything. That happiness isn't something you find, it's something you create through practice. That contentment isn't something you earn, it's something you choose, moment by moment, breath by breath. That peace isn't the absence of difficulty, it's the presence of a trained mind in the midst of whatever life brings. You were never taught how to be happy, but you can teach yourself. You can learn to receive good fortune without building defenses against it. You can practice presence the way you've practiced worry. You can train your mind to default to gratitude instead of fear, to acceptance instead of resistance, to here instead of somewhere else. The echoes of that ancient understanding are still reverberating, still calling to anyone who's tired of being an expert in misery and ready to become a student of joy. Still offering the same freedom that transformed a powerless slave into one of the most powerful teachers who ever lived. These are the echoes of Epictetus, and they were always meant for you.